This is Granddad's Stories for Gwen, Episode 3. Oh, we got another book. This one's about the Civil War, again written by an amateur author. Somebody was in, but this time the 124th Regiment. And this is significant because your great-great-great-great-grandfather belonged to this unit. So he's mentioned in this book, unfortunately for being wounded. And he also used a newspaper clipping relevant to veterans, some story common at the time. Use it as a bookmark, and you see that the binding of the pages and that friction turned out to be stronger than the newspaper, and it got little fragments in there, and this is torn up, and it's a little bit, see it, a little bit colored where this piece of newspaper was. So that's worthy of note that after 130 years, because this was written in 1880, after 130 years, if you use a newspaper as a bookmark, it's going to deteriorate and discolor the pages. So you don't really want to do that. He's said that these amateurs authors tended, because they were amateurs, tended to put in all the details and not edit things out like a professional author would. For example, an author in this time, 1880s, was Samuel L. Clemens. And he was the first to write not in proper English when his characters were speaking, but the way Americans talked. And along with this, he wanted to have his pen name as the author of his books something more Americanized than his actual name. And so he picked something based on his boyhood days and growing up near the Mississippi River and the steamboats that went up and down the Mississippi. And several of them, many of them, ran aground because the depth of the Mississippi River kept changing by seasons and years. It would move left and right, and height, depth would go up and down. And these steamboats, they needed to find out how deep the water was so they could avoid running aground. And what they did was have a lead weight on the end of a rope, and they could put it in the water, and they could detect just when it hit the bottom, and the rope was marked off, and the crew member that was doing this would shout out to the captain what that depth was. And it was measured in, everybody knows, a book on measurements will tell you, it was measured in fathoms, which are 6 feet each. But they don't tell you what actual markings or how they were called off in this episode. But if you ask anybody who's read a lot of books, name one of those measurements that crew member on the Mississippi Riverboat or other places might call out. And a few of them might say, I have no idea. But most of them will say, well, I know one, Mark Twain. And that's the name that Clemens took as his pen name, and a lot of people know that story. But if you ask them, well, name another thing they might call out, another measurement, they'd say, I don't know, I'd have to guess. Well, they haven't seen this video. Because on page 272, they have a story, one of their adventures that took place on March 8th, 1864 at Camp Chalmette. It's a town today you can find on the map. It's 4 miles east-southeast of New Orleans on the north side of the Mississippi River. It winds around a lot there. So let's see what happened then. The night of the 7th of March, we enjoyed the luxury of one of the heaviest showers we ever experienced, a rainfall peculiar to the lower latitudes and of the power of which the North affords no example. It seemed for a time as though the Mississippi was spilling out in sheets, and we should be overwhelmed in spite of us. Of course, we were but poorly protected against such a deluge, many of us being in sheltered tents, but the worst was from beneath. Few of us had any bunks, as we had no lumber, and our cradle beds in the grass between the corn rows became our undoing. The shower came on about 2 o'clock, just when we were sleeping most soundly. Many were awakened, first by the waters rising under them, and while the senses of hundreds were only partially unlocked, some wag cried out in the twang of the rivermen in heaving the lead, 6 feet! This set the camp in a roar of laughter and was immediately replied to by someone in a different voice from another quarter of the camp with the cry of 7 feet, indicating the rapid deepening of the waters. And now the boatmen themselves could not have called it in more skillfully than the thoroughly aroused soldiers did, as they ran through the whole range of the lead line, in every pitch and quality of voice, from the piping treble to the deepest bass, with draw and twang and snap and inflections up and inflections down. It was 8 feet and 9 feet and a quarter less twain and Mark Twain and Mark underwater Twain. The water still rising as the rain still poured, and everybody laughing ready to split, till at last the climax was reached, and the calling ended by the deepest bass voice of all, droning out from a remote quarter with a dying cadence which forbade response, save with a yell, "No bottom!" Oh, it was cruel, and it was excruciating to have to laugh so, all drenched as we were, in the darkness of the night and the flood still pouring. Many came right out from their tents and yelled in their agony of laughter, crying, "Oh dear, it will kill me," and splashed through the camp like otters in a stream. Everybody was good-natured. No evil effects on our drenching followed, and today Camp Chalmette has no more vivid recollections for us than those of that night, culminating in that wonderful "no bottom." Many of us would give more than a penny to know who was the owner of that great bass voice. And that's it for episode 3 of Granddad's Stories for Gwen.